Welcome everyone to the Architectural Board of Review for May 21st. And we'll start with a plan check, please. Plan check. A mic check. Plan check comes later.
Here we go. Chair Goodine.
Here.
Vice Chair Amy Fitzgerald Tripp.
Here, I get the full name. You just
This
do.
time
You
you
can
do.
just say Tripp.
Kevin Moore.
Here.
Howard Whitash.
Here.
We have quorum.
Excellent.
Very
Okay.
official.
Rough start. Yeah. So we'll open public comment. Seeing no one, we'll go on to approval of the minutes for the ABR for May 7th, 2018. And we'll take comments on those minutes.
On item number 2. Motion, under the motion number 1, it should just say X bracing. It's
Or structural.
just, yeah.
Cross
Either
bracing,
Cross, yeah.
seismic bracing, whatever. And I thought that that was the consensus of the board, was that it should be black in color, because
That's
I
what it
remember
says.
I was not part of that consensus,
Yeah, right.
and I still am not.
Okay, it's all right. We won't hold it against you.
Right. So cross bracing. No.
Cross bracing. Okay. Also, under that same item, I don't recall number 7 being part of the motion. I wonder if that got carried over, because the plan, we did have a full landscape plan and it had been reviewed by
No, it-
HLC.
I don't think it did. I don't think we had notes
It
from that.
had been reviewed by HLC. I think I'm not entirely sure why that was in there. I do remember there being some sort of discussion about a landscape plan needing to be reviewed again.
I don't think they reviewed what was presented. I don't think he reviewed what was presented. I think that was where the discussion was. And they,
We can
because
review
I
the tapes.
think that they
Possibly. We're supposed to
confirmed
ratify it.
that, because there was no objection to that.
Well, there was a updated landscape plan provided.
Right, but
Seemed pretty complete.
because Bob stepped down,
Right.
and so we just asked for the HLC landscape architect to review, because
I
what
thought
they
it had-
presented was
had-
new.
I thought it had been already.
I
But can you just check on that? We'll leave it in the motion.
leave it
but-
because there's no harm in them. They can come
Yeah.
and say
Yeah.
it was already reviewed. But
Okay.
That's what I thought
Yeah.
it was.
All right.
It was a outdated plan.
Any other comments? All right, so we need a motion for approval of the minutes. Bob, seconded by,
I'll second.
Kevin. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
I'm opposed to that one motion on item 1.
Okay, we're just approving the minutes, whether the minutes are accurate or not. We're not voting on particular items. So are the minutes accurate
I
on that
don't
item?
think they're accurate. It says in the text, item number 1, the expiration should be black in color.
We changed that to cross bracing.
Right, but I still don't
That's
think
what
it
the
should.
board voted on, though. That was what the majority of the vote.
I don't support that. I mean, it
That's
didn't get
okay.
my,
That's
it didn't
okay.
get my objection.
You're not supporting the motion.
Okay,
You're just-
I'm going to vote against the minutes because of that, okay? I mean, I can do that, and you can still pass the minutes.
Yes, Howard, but it's
Okay.
not what we're voting on. We're not voting on projects at this point. We're just reviewing the minutes
I
to see
think
if the
those minutes are not accurate, the way it played out,
Is
those
it be-
minutes,
Okay, well,
that
do
one item.
you want to discuss that item then? Is there something that
Is there open for discussion?
well, we just asked for comments. The last 5 minutes, we've been
I
taking
believe
comments.
I gave the comment that it was the consensus of the board that felt that should be painted black. Personally, I don't think that's correct, and I don't support that minute. So if you want to put the word consensus of the board is that the X bracing should be painted black, I will agree that those are correct. But I'm a dissenting member of that consensus.
Well, then actually, the minutes aren't correct, because it should be
Yeah,
Howard, one dissension. or one
You voted for that.
nay vote on that item.
Okay, we
Yeah.
can change that to
Yeah,
one.
because it shows right now that you voted for it.
Right.
But
Yeah.
I don't think that you
I
did.
don't think I did.
Yeah.
Okay. So we've approved the minutes.
That's been corrected, and I now support the minutes.
I don't know if,
I don't
I
think you
mean,
did vote
there's supposed to
for
be
it.
a reflection of what happened in the meeting. If you're changing your vote, I don't know if we can do that.
He's not
No,
changing
he's
his
not
vote.
changing it.
He was,
Well,
Okay. I think we have to hear the meat item. I don't, we can, I mean, minutes pass regardless.
I
Yeah,
think if
they've-
you look
everything's
at the
passed.
video, he didn't, at the end of it, I don't think he
voted
supported the
nay?
motion,
Okay.
which is what we're talking about.
Sure, yeah, we can change that if the video reflects that.
Okay.
consent calendar. May 14th.
For the May 14th Architectural Board of Review consent agenda, item A, 3805 State Street, received approval of its review after final with comments. Item B, 3200 block of Cliffs Drive was continued 1 week with comments. Item C, 302 Meigs Road was continued 1 week with comments.
Okay, we need a first and a second for approval of the minutes and consent calendar for May 14th. Amy,
First,
seconded by Bob. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. May 21st, please.
For the May 21st consent agenda for the Architectural Board of Review, item A, 302 Meigs Road was given approval of its review after final with comments. Item B, 3891 State Street was continued 1 week with comments. And item C, 3200 block of Cliff Drive was continued 1 week.
first.
First by Amy, seconded by Bob. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Announcements, please.
There's one announcement today. The city clerk's office has reviewed all of your ethics training certificates on file and wanted to remind you that there is a requirement that you attend an ethics training. So as of today, Board Member Cunningham does not have one on file. Chair Gradine has one from 2014.
Does that qualify?
I will have to check. Once every 2 years. So no,
Okay.
that does not. It looks actually like, I'll just say who is current, and that is Vice Chair Tripp. He's the only current member
Much
of
easier.
their
that
ethics
way.
training, rather than going down the list.
I want everyone
right.
else to be named. No, that's an online thing, right?
Excellent. Yeah, you have to sit there and answer the
It's an online training.
I
questionnaire.
actually don't believe it. Is it?
Yes.
Okay.
It's
it is,
a
but we also
online-
we've got an upcoming
There is one coming up.
large-scale meeting that will suffice to satisfy that requirement, so you don't need to hang out online for 2 hours
It is, it's 2
to
hours.
make the commitment.
And it will be conducted by the city attorney.
You know when that's
Do we know when that is?
Yeah,
Just
we
says
do.
upcoming, but we can get you information on that
Okay.
after the meeting.
Thank you, Bob.
My pleasure.
Any subcommittee reports? Well, I'll just mention I had the pleasure of going to the Coastal Housing Commission conference this weekend. Did anyone else get to there? Really excellent main speaker there, Senator
Scott Weiner.
Scott
Weiner?
Weiner, talking about the history of housing in California and what's currently being looked at legislatively. Anyway, it's probably be posted online on the Coastal Housing Coalition website at some point, like they did for last year's conference. It's really worth listening to. Okay, so we can start with item 1, 632 East Canon Perdido Street.
Chair Gradine?
Yes.
Hi, Kelly Brodesson with Community Development.
Hi,
I
Kelly.
just wanted to just preface the meeting today with giving you guys a little bit of history. In 2000, the applicant, the Boys and Girls Club, came in and got approval to put portable modular schoolrooms up on the project site, and they were supposed to be temporary. And they were going to come in with a proposal for a formal, actual permanent school building. And I guess due to funding and various changes with the economy, they haven't been able to do that. So today they're coming in for comments only on the proposal to keep the modular buildings permanently. And regardless of what you say today is support or design or architecture or landscape, the project will be required to go to the Planning Commission for a development plan and a conditional use permit. So they're just here for basic comments on the request to keep the modulars permanently.
Okay. So I'll just read the project description. Proposal to convert temporary commercial floor area to permanent floor area. Project consists of the conversion of 4 temporary modular classrooms totaling 7,450 square feet to permanent commercial floor area to be used by the Boys and Girls Club for a quasi-public use. Temporary modular classrooms were permitted in 2001, along with the removal of 4 parking spaces. No exterior changes are proposed for the modular buildings. Project requires PC review for development plan approval. Welcome.
Welcome.
I'm Gala Macon, the land use planner, and I'm here today with Lori Lease, the executive director of the Boys and Girls Club, and Jeff Gorell, the project architect. We're here to answer any questions, and Lori would like to say a few words too.
Hi. Just a quick history. I was born in Santa Barbara, as was my grandmother, so I'm third generation. I have great pride in living in Santa Barbara and great pride in the Boys and Girls Club. We were founded in 1938. We had 10 boys at the time. By the end of the year, we had 207 boys attending. Only boys were allowed at that time. Although this building, our building, is not historically an historical landmark, I think it is historical in what it does for this community. Currently, last year we had over 1,700 kids, boys and girls, go through our building as members, and close to 3,000 that we served in the community in various uses as sports. The high school team plays there every day because they have limited gym use. I think that in this community, when I go out, I go, oh, I went to the club. Oh, I went to the club. And I think for us, as we're growing and we have limited resources, for us to keep these as classrooms, we offer free educational tutoring after school. CDBG supports us in that with their efforts. And so what it is called Power Hour, and it's a 1-hour homework club, and it's free. I don't know if any of you guys have kids, but tutoring costs anywhere from $80, $70, or $80 an hour, and at our club it's free. So that's access for all these kids to get free tutoring. And right now, we're just crammed in that building, and having an extra classroom or extra space for them to go for that hour is really needed. And I hope that you guys see that we do need this space. So
It is a nonprofit, isn't it?
yeah, we're a
Yes.
nonprofit. Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Jeff Gorell, I've been assisting this wonderful organization for a little over 16 years. So my job is to just help shepherd them through the process, and we'll be going to Planning Commission. What we'd be looking for today.
You want to go through these?
Yeah, sure.
Thanks.
What you're looking at here is a photograph that's taken, look at this. Photograph is taken from this street, looking this direction. And you can see the fence and hedge along here. The portables are on the opposite side. Backwards here. Sorry, this picture's taken from this direction.
Oh, okay. So we're not seeing the portables.
Yeah, you're not seeing the portables.
Classroom.
Okay, the classrooms, you can see from, let me see, I'm at Canon Perdido again. This view is looking this direction. That's probably the only prominent view or view that you can see of the classrooms is from Canon Perdido, right at that location. And that would be, okay. And if you stand and turn around, then you're looking at the high school. That's the view that you see there. You go inside the campus, and these are the classrooms, and this is a view looking out towards the play area here and parking. Another view. And then I know oftentimes we like to stand on the site and look backwards to see, say, if you can see them, they can see you. This is a photograph that is standing inside this area here of the classrooms looking back out this direction. And there's a high
that one there?
hedge,
Yes.
this picture here.
Okay.
So that hedge that you see is a tall hedge right here.
And that's the corner of the classroom right there.
Correct. There's an apartment complex that's up at the top of a pretty steep hill here. This is a view from the classrooms looking back towards the apartments. This view is standing in the parking lot here looking back towards the houses. Another view from inside this area. And then this view is what you see as you're driving by, and that's on Cannon Perdido as you're driving this direction. The portables are back in here, or classrooms rather. This is a view as you're walking along the sidewalk looking this direction. The apartment complex that is right next door, this is a view if you're walking on the sidewalk looking this direction. That's the apartment complex. And the classrooms are right around the corner. And this last view that I have is from Cannon Perdido as you look up the driveway of the apartment complex. And there's a high hedge along here, and then it drops down for visual sighting of the cars as you go by. So really, there was one photograph that was looking straight on this direction. That's really the
First one.
the only view that you have that's of any real consequence, I suppose, in terms of the public viewing it.
So it's a little bit hard to see, but there's a fence in front, looks like.
That's right. There's a fence in front. There's a little bit of landscaping.
These two trees are those two.
That's correct. Hmm.
How about from Salsa Puentes? Is there a view looking back towards the classroom?
There's not. This is a very, very steep hill up this direction. Yeah, so you can't
Okay.
see anything. Yeah.
All right.
So I think that's pretty much it. And what we would hope for is if perhaps you could see any enhancements and support the classrooms.
Okay.
Enhancements? What?
Are you proposing any enhancements?
We're not proposing any enhancements. We're
Okay.
coming in as an existing facility, hoping to make the classrooms permanent. And if you could see anything that would be of help.
This thing? Well, this is the same street.
The view from Cannon Perdido, would it be this
I
one?
thought it was
That would be the view.
right angle.
Okay. Does that complete your presentation?
It does.
Okay. So we'll open public comment. Is there anyone here that would like to comment on this project? Yes, we have one. Okay.
Are these going to be?
You need to come forward, and we need to get your name.
My name's Sarah Robinson, and I live at 6.
You need to speak into a microphone and take a chair.
This is my first time, sorry.
It's all right.
She needs to speak into that.
Yeah, if the
microphone.
applicants can move to the
Yeah,
seating
momentarily, while we're taking public comment, the applicant has to go into the audience again. So, yes.
My name's Sarah Robinson, and I live at 615 East De La Guerra. And before I go forward with my statement, I do have a question about the classrooms. 'Cause
Sure.
I didn't see anything on there, but there used to be ones that were backed up to our property that they've taken down.
Mm-hmm.
Are they going to be putting the permanent classrooms there, or are they further closer towards Cannon Perdido?
They're not moving anything that's there now.
Okay, so they're not
It's just the
planning
way
on
they
building
are.
on there?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Well, I have some photos that I've taken of the litter that's around the neighborhood from the Boys and Girls Club. There's a lot of kids there that go outside and are not monitored, and there's been kids that have barked at my dogs and that have said very inappropriate things to me because I've asked them to please not bark at my dogs while I'm walking them. I've got photos of all the litter just from today right around that square block from these kids that are being unmonitored outside of the Boys and Girls Club. And I don't think that it's a good idea to put anything else in there, because unless they can get the proper staff to watch these kids and make sure that they're being held accountable for, because they're going in and out of the building and then skateboarding on the sidewalks and leaving trash. I saw some of them throwing rocks at the church a couple weeks ago, and it's already the kids that are there aren't being watched. If they want to add more classrooms, I feel like they need more staff or something like that. And it's been a huge invasion of our privacy. They went to take down a couple of trees from the back of our property, trespassed onto our property, and took down all of the trees. And my boyfriend spent about 10 hours and $500 on wood to build a fence to keep our dogs safe and ensure our privacy. So, and my landlord, the owner of the property, his name's Martin De La Cruz, and he's against this as well. So I'm representing him as well.
You're there, he's against leaving the
Against
classrooms?
building the classrooms, yeah.
Okay, all right.
So
Thank you.
That's all I have to say. Thank you.
We have another request to speak, David Bolton.
Thank you. I also live on the street. I've been there for 20 years. I have 2 lots, and I actually have a much different opinion. The Boys Club needs space like this. It needs to do things to encourage our youth to have places to go and to be off the streets. The staff right now in the club is the best it's been in terms of organization and doing stuff for the kids. To see the programs and to see what they're doing out there, it's actually a positive. And classrooms like this are just a good asset. And the location of these is actually for that site the best. They're away from the street. They're tucked into the back corner. All of the homes that butt up to it have large vegetation to screen them already. So you couldn't pick a better place to leave these classrooms. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Is there anyone else that would like to speak on this project? Thanks. Thank you. All right, so we'll go to questions from the board. Howard, any questions?
So just understanding what the project is, it's a change of use. Of these existing from classroom to quasi-public use, or is that?
No, they'll remain classrooms. They weren't classified as permanent, and that's what we're asking for, is that they be
Oh, I
classified as
see.
permanent. They do have a building permit. They meet all the code requirements.
Okay. And so when you say from convert temporary commercial to permanent commercial, okay.
Yep.
So, and you're not proposing any enhancements to these buildings, like not painting, not kind of cleaning it up, repairing maybe some bumped corners or whatever, just exactly as they are?
Well, maintenance, they do a pretty good job of keeping up with the maintenance. There's some ADA items that can be made current. The board fully supports that. We're looking and are talking about perhaps some landscaping enhancements adjacent to Canon Perdido. But we were not going to dive into all of that. We wanted to kind of hear the board's thoughts.
Okay. Okay. That's all the questions I have.
Okay. Kevin?
This fence that's along Canon Perdido Street, it's shows it better in the photo. Maybe it's, do you have it? There it is. Can you point out on plan where that actually is and where it stops and starts?
Here?
On the site plan.
Should be on the site plan.
It's somewhere in there.
Yeah, I think it's about right in here.
And is it,
Is it out at the sidewalk, or?
It's not
I
at the
can't really-
sidewalk.
Okay.
another picture?
It's back. It's back right about here.
Okay, I'm just gonna.
It's kind of in line with the art studio, is that right? Somewhere back there.
Yeah, it's right.
And is there a hedge, looks like there's a hedge in front of it, or?
There's some, I don't know if those are yuccas, Bob, There's,
Kind of hard to tell. Scale of photograph.
This one you can see it. There's no hedge.
Just sort of a
yeah, there's
vine.
no hedge, and then there's some, I think there might be yuccas in there.
Okay.
Is there any lighting in that area? Or?
Yeah, there's lighting on all the outsides of the portals.
Oh, okay. Okay, thanks.
Okay, Bob.
From what I see on these photographs, you don't have much landscaping. Where's the pointer? Thank you, Jeff. Along here, or along here to this corner of this permanent building. Is that correct? Would you be
Correct.
willing? Would you be willing to commit to enhancing that landscaping?
We already have plans. We have written a grant to Santa Barbara Beautiful, and we're in the final stages of them helping us with the project. So I think they're going to provide irrigation for us, hopefully, and we'll find out within the next week or so. I've been talking to Duke, and once they put in the drip irrigation, we had to pull everything out because it was high water, and we're trying to be observant to low, drought-tolerant plants. So we pulled everything out. We're getting drip irrigation and putting drought-tolerant, and we've already done it with the front of our building, but we're planning on extending it to that part too.
So,
Okay, and will you be including that in these drawings? Because you're not really supposed to be doing landscaping of an existing commercial facility without getting a permit.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah. We
Okay.
just pulled out the stuff because of the sprinklers were spraying all over and.
Sure.
Yeah,
No,
they
that
weren't.
makes sense.
Green water, yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. No other questions.
Okay, Amy.
Was the fence installed as part of the temporary structures?
That's been there, I think, for a while. Jim, has that been there for a while? I didn't hear the question. The fence
Was
in
the
front of.
fence installed
fence
as part of the
temporary or
temporary
permanent?
classrooms?
At one point, yeah, since 2001.
Okay. Answer seems to be yes.
Okay. I guess these were installed obviously like for temporary. Was there like a plan to do a renovation of the main building, and that's why these
I
were
think
put in?
that's my frustration with this whole project. El Montecito came in with these grand plans to build a permanent structure, and these were going to be temporary. Then they abandoned it, and so we're left with the portables. And then Providence came in, and the same thing happened. You can see that they had these grand plans to build an extension. They were going to pay for it, and then they couldn't get the funding. So now we're trying to make use of, maybe, hopefully we can raise some money in a capital campaign, but for now, it would be great just to have these for our kids to use or the community to use for other interests.
Okay. And are there like AC units on the backs of all of the?
there are. Mhm. And I believe they had done a sound study at the time that these went in, and they're all permitted.
Right, but temporary, for a temporary structure, right? Okay.
I believe the building permits didn't distinguish between temporary or permanent. It was per their building code.
That's a good point. I did check with Lonnie on that, and that I said, well, if we make it through here and these are considered permanent, will we be going back through the building department to re-permit them? And the answer was no. They're, as far as the building department is concerned.
No, I was just asking if that's what
Yeah.
those were, that's all. Okay.
David? Questions?
To follow up on that last point, is there an option for the units to be switched to up on the rooftops?
I suppose we could look into that. You're concerned about the sound?
Yeah, they do seem close to the property line, but if the studies have already been completed on the last round and that was adequate, then you got to accept that. But I think it's not all the units, but I think A and B are particularly, A mostly is pretty close to that residential unit up next to it, so I'm worried about the sound that it'll give off.
We can take a look at that. Over the years that they've been there, it hasn't been a problem in terms of
To which side, though?
complaints or- yeah.
Okay, and then do you have any pictures of the neighbor that came in and was just talking about the landscape and the trees? Do you have any pictures of that back part of the property around Classroom D? That might
There's one
help
of
us
those
see what's
pictures
going on.
was looking back that direction. Let me see if I can find it. best picture. Well, I think I don't have one looking directly behind it. There's, what you're referring to is if
Put
you,
it so it's under the camera.
oops. If you get back, I don't have a picture of that, but if you get back in behind the portables, it's so dense with vegetation that you can't see anything. It's kind of like this, where we're looking back at the apartment complex.
I guess that's the part I was trying to clarify, because she was saying that they were trimmed down and she lost all our privacy after that landscaping was.
Her
I think
home,
she was saying it was over here off of, to the east, yeah, off Delegated, so to the east of Building D.
So it'd be,
One of those.
did she leave?
I think she
No,
left.
she
He left, yeah.
Oh, that's-
I'm not sure which one
One
it
of
was.
these properties along here.
Yeah, because, I mean, there's nothing been cut down through here. It's very dense vegetation.
And I mean, if you look on the survey too, a little closer, there's a tree there, but it's on your property line according to the survey, and the fence is actually on the backside of the tree. So, yeah, so maybe she was just possibly confused that she assumed because the tree was on the other side of the fence that all that was on her side too.
That could be, very well be, yeah.
I'm just curious if the vegetation's still heavy there, or if it is a possibility to see anything.
It is heavy, yeah.
Okay, no further questions.
Okay. So these were permitted in 2001 and built in 2001, or in place, or?
I think they were in place from 2001
Okay.
on, yes.
Okay. So 17 years they've been there.
Been there a while.
And the temporary nature of it, was it a 10-year period that they were permitted for, or what was it?
3 years.
3.
3?
Maybe
Chair
there's-
Green, they were originally approved as 3-year modulars because as she said, the original plan was to propose a new formal permanent building. And since then, as I said, they've had trouble getting the funding together to build the permanent school, so the city's worked with them and provided extensions. But at this point, we've been saying that this is going to be the last extension, but it's a really hard, it's a hard spot to be in because it's such a good use, the collaborative effort between a nonprofit school and the Boys and Girls Club.
Yeah.
So their solution is right now to see if they can keep them as permanent. So once they submit for DART, of course, it'll go through fire department, SWIMP, ADA accessibility. So although they're not proposing anything, there might be some things that are going to have to be addressed as we proceed. But they wanted to come in today and get comments from you guys to see if it was even worth going forward with trying to keep these permanently.
I see.
It's a little awkward.
Thank you, that was helpful. All right, comments, Howard?
I have to say this is a very worthwhile project, community service project. And I understand that these were not installed as permanent structures. And I see that there's an encroachment issue on 2 of them in the front. They encroach into the side yard. And the equipment that is attached to them is also within that encroachment. If these become permanent, I would be looking for some kind of offer from the applicant as to how to abate the issue of the encroachment and the fact that these machines, the air conditioning, are even closer to the neighboring property than would be normally permitted. I see that the main building was originally a sort of Spanish colonial red tile roof, and there are additions to that. The additions seem to be parapeted flat roof type additions and color compatible. The temporary modulars seem to be a little worn out. I think they need some color or some kind of upgrading. They seem to be a little bit worn out. Retrofitting or some kind of I do think that the fence in the front is the chain link fence. Is it called a rolling fence or something?
Yeah.
That ought to be studied. I think there's some landscaping that needs to be studied. I don't know quite what to recommend at the moment, but I think it should be looked at. Maybe we need a landscape plan. And there was a mention about can this mechanical equipment be installed on the roof? These roofs are flat. If they are installed on the roof, they would need screening. But I think the project has great merit. And I think that because this is a nonprofit organization, that these buildings should be allowed to be reused or somehow remain, whether they're relocated or adjusted or there's some kind of compensation for the encroachment, that's to be determined by the Planning Commission, whatever.
Okay.
Those are my comments.
All right, thank you. Kevin?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a noble thing you guys are doing there, and I commend you for that. And I could support the conversion to permanent facilities if the street side and alley side of Classroom A was screened in some way or upgraded in some way to present a little bit better to the public and its neighbor. And whether that's through landscaping or some sort of treatment on the exterior of that building, at least the street-facing exterior, then I think that would be beneficial for the neighborhood and the project.
Okay, thank you. Bob?
I think you need a clear as-built and/or new proposed landscape plan. Bring it to the board for review and approval. I think with regard to the AC units in the setback, I would recommend that you check with your neighbors and determine whether or not there's an issue with those. I would not like to see them put up on the roof just without determining first whether you need to, because right now they're out of sight. I don't mind these buildings. I think Howard made a comment regarding their being worn. I think as long as they're maintained properly and painted if necessary, that would be fine. I almost feel like there still needs to be some kind of sunset for this temporary approval. And, whether that's 10 years down the road or, some other period of time, that's okay with me. I just really don't like the idea of approving temporary buildings permanently. I think the neighborhood deserves better than that. Understand your situation with regard to funding. If it sunsets in 10 years and you come back and ask for renewal, you get the renewal, then you're fine. But, again, temporary means temporary, and I don't like saying we should allow temporary to become permanent. But I think it's a worthy project. I really don't have any issues with, anything else. Just concern. Oh, well, the other is one more thing. Obviously, you've got at least one neighbor who isn't very happy about the kids. Off campus or on. So I would urge you to try to maintain good neighborliness and work with all your neighbors and the kids to make sure that they don't go out and, they're angels on the property, and once they leave the property, they're delinquents. Don't want
Well, to address what she said about the garbage, we probably pick up 2 bags of garbage every morning. And it's because there's overnight parking there. And we have quite a few vehicles on the side there because the armory's, shut down. And they just use our sidewalk right there as a trash can. So this morning, there's a broken TV, food. I mean, it's huge bags of garbage I have to clean up. So the kids don't get out of school till 3. So if she said she took pictures this morning,
Yeah, well, maybe if you discussed that with her and she understood that it wasn't necessarily your kids, but other people doing that, then you might get to a little closer understanding.
They're not allowed to watch TV on the sidewalk.
There you go. That's all. Thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Amy?
Yeah, I agree with my fellow board members. I think it's a good use of the buildings that you have right now and in your organization, I think, but for it to be there more permanently rather than deemed like temporary, I think that just some maintenance on the buildings need to happen, and especially in this view where it's close to the street, the fence looks like it's temporary, and I would say either install something that is more permanent, or you could go the planting route where you could plant it out so it's more of a hedge in front of the chain link that you don't need. So, but I think that I'm kind of in the same thought process as Bob, because we do see a fair amount of temporary structures, and then you always wonder if they're going to become permanent structures. It's just a way to make sure they're still, still have the integrity that we hold all the other projects to, basically, that come before us. But I think that some maintenance would help. But I could support these staying in use for like another period of time.
Okay. David?
I agree. I think the only aspect that concerns me is the long-term effect. I think there's potential for it creates a precedence where other applicants who come by see this same type of proposal and they say, oh, well, you guys were able to get, we were able to do this at the Boys and Girls Club or whatever project it may be. We've seen things like this even at the desal plant where they had a temporary structure, so it's come up. I don't know how that gets rectified, and I think from other situations we've had a hard time kind of establishing how that even gets worked into the approval. But I would support it. I'd be more inclined to support it if it has some kind of programmatic goal, I guess, if you will, to keep it loose. It doesn't have to be a defined master plan or anything like that, but just the intention, I think, that they will be eventually become something more permanent, or they will be something permanent. Overall, though, I agree. I approve the proposal. I think it's good what you guys are doing. It's for a really good cause. It helps a lot of kids in the area, and so I'm fine with all that aspects. I just think I would piggyback on the comments of board member Cunningham and board member Witoch, and I'd support their comments and just identify that one thing. My only concern is the long term. That's it. Everything else is great.
Okay, so this is comments only, and I'll just add a few tidbits. I happened to be on the ABR when this first came through, and this is ancient history. But and there was a long discussion about how can the ABR approve a temporary building, because there's no teeth in it. There's no assurance that property owner is going to come back in 3 years. So we were advised that we needed to look at it as though it were a permanent building, that it was going to be there forever. If it's not something that we could support being there forever, then we shouldn't approve it. That was the advice we were given by senior staff. Jaime Limon said that straight out. So that's the way it was reviewed. And so in my view, this is a permanent installation. But at the same time, since it is now has come back to us, we have an opportunity to look at it again. I think many of the comments were apt. That the landscaping and screening in regards to classroom A, a landscape plan that shows what's there now and if anything is going to be proposed, and some upgrades to that building in terms of its public the public view of the building at that front corner. In my view about the AC units, if they were approved by the building department, one of the conditions that they look at is the decibel level at the property line. That goes along with any AC unit. So if it was approved by them and it wasn't illegally put in, and it was recognized it was in the setback, then I don't see a problem with it. And I think the fact that it's hidden is a plus. So those would be, let's collect the comments then. So In general, the board is in favor of the units being approved as permanent or semi-permanent buildings. That the board would also like to see some enhancements possibly to the landscaping at the south, at the Cannon Perdido Street frontage, and possibly along the alleyway bordering the apartments. The board would also encourage some minor upgrades, which might include some enhanced detailing or painting of the front building in particular that is viewable from the street. And that, of course, the landscaping plan would also include any existing fencing. And whether or not that should be upgraded, I think is still a question mark, because it looks like it's already starting to become plant-filled. It's already starting to become a hedge. So to take it down and put something up that's going to eventually be a hedge doesn't seem to make sense to me. But we need more information about that. Board members want to add to that?
Well, this, I think Bob kind of brought up a crucial question. If this were now becoming a permanent building, Permanent, we would normally ask it to meet the architectural standards. But this is not. This is a temporary building that is getting in under the wire as a permanent building, not meeting architectural standards. So I would say we need to be very clear that this is a conditional approval. I mean, we can pass this on to the Planning Commission or whoever decides this. But I mean, I think that architecturally, our standard is if it's a permanent thing, it needs to comply. And if it is not a permanent thing, okay, as is. Enhancements, yes, painting, landscaping, screening. If you want to screen these buildings out so they become non-buildings, then
We're getting into a
okay.
long discussion now.
Well, I'm just asking for clarification.
I summarized the comments,
Yeah.
and that's what I hear the majority of the board saying. And I'd be willing to make that as a motion. And we could add, if you'd like, that the board recommends that, the project be re-reviewed in 10 years, if you like. The city would have the option of, continuing it when that time frame came up, like they continued the last one. If board members feel like that should be part of the motion, we could include that.
I would appreciate that.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think
Agree.
so.
Okay. So we'll include that comment.
Sunset?
Yeah, 10-year sunset. Other comments? So we need a seconder to the motion then.
Second.
Seconded by Bob. All in favor?
Sorry, what was the
Aye.
motion? Is it indefinite to PC?
Yes, it would be indefinite to PC with the comments I already summarized. Yes, return to the full board. Sure.
I think there's going to be some changes.
Right.
Oh, there will be.
Wait,
Before PC?
Once it goes through DART, I have a feeling there will be some changes that will need to be made that will require this to come back to ABR before it goes to PC.
Okay, so it would be indefinite continuance to DART then, and to PC if it's acceptable. Would it be come back? Board members feel like it should come back to full board?
Yes.
there are
Yes.
changes, I guess.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Jeff, we got two sets of photos there.
Do you want this? Do you have,
We have two of them.
you can take this,
Hello.
save paper.
Scott?
The prodigal returns.
We're on to item 2, 711 North Milpas.
So we put these on top in addition to the drawings we have in Boston College Elevations.
This is an in-progress review that was last looked at July 5th,
2016.
2016. Thank you for adding that. Yes. This is a proposal for a new mixed-use development to be developed under their AUD program. Includes a lot merger between 8 lots for total project site of 66,199 square feet. 2 existing residential units and commercial buildings totaling 33,000 square feet are to be demolished, and a new 57,721 square foot mixed-use building will be constructed, containing a total of 2,874 square feet of non-residential floor area and 76 residential units. Unit mix is 44 2-bedroom, 33 1-bedroom, and an average unit size of 684 square feet. Proposed density is 50 units per acre on a parcel which would allow up to 63 per acre. And there's 89 parking spaces proposed, as well as 80 bicycle parking spaces. Project received staff hearing officer approval for a front setback modification in May of 2016 and requires a level 2 substantial conformance determination for the reduction in commercial floor area, which has brought the project compliant with city parking requirements. So does that mean you've been to PC?
We have been to PC. It's an approved project. It
Okay.
received design approval back in 2016. We are making some minor changes during the working drawings.
Okay.
And so we're here for an in-progress review to see how you feel about those minor changes.
All right.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a comment. So this project, as you said, did get staff hearing officer approval for modifications. There was a front setback modification and a parking mod. So they're back for in-progress review. They have made changes. We've determined that they need a substantial conformance determination. So they've just submitted that, and we'll be routing that to our staff. And over the next 30 days, we'll be reviewing that and coming up with whether we agree with this, whether it's substantially conforms to the previous project. So we'd like you to look at just the changes that are being proposed right now. The main change was a change from a commercial to 3 more residential units along the frontage, and some parking changes and some other design changes. And give your comments on those to us. So we'll incorporate that into our substantial conformance determination.
Okay, so the changes are not in the project description that I just read out. They're not enumerated or
They may
described.
not be, no. I think
Okay.
the applicant needs to, they've submitted a letter to me outlining everything, but
Okay.
that needs to be
We're happy to walk you through that.
expressed by the applicant.
That letter, is that available?
Yes,
Can you
actually.
read it, or can you give us copies or something?
There's a summary of some changes.
Mr. Chair,
The applicant's going to walk us through the changes.
Yeah, good.
What-
I can leave this with you.
Okay.
Too, but they're going to go over each of those.
Yeah, this is a letter from the applicant, so you can read it if you
Well,
like.
as long as it exists and
Uh-huh.
you have it in front of you, I'm good.
Okay.
So we're going to talk
Walk you
about,
through step by step.
yeah, great.
So we also have a number of items that were included in the motion from last time. Are you addressing those as well?
Yes, but today we'd like you to focus on these items first. And At
Okay.
this time, we'll go over it. We'll be back for a full final review where you can review every detail and really sink your teeth into it. We don't want to waste your time too much today, but we really need feedback on the change that we've made to the Milpas and Ortega frontage.
Okay. Well, I'm just going to mention the comments from last time that seem most pertinent. We were asking for a landscape plan. You probably don't have that yet.
We do have it.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Restudy the architecture on the first floor facing Milpa Street and elevation facing Ortega Street. The board is okay with the elongated, deep maroon colored brick. That's gone, though.
Well, we're going to talk about that today and get a read from you guys.
Okay. Applicant shall provide full color and materials board. Number 4, study parapet detail of the northeast corner and make it different from a standard parapet. Number 5, study to break up the second and third story projection on the north elevation. Number 6, study removing all the awnings on Milpas. Okay, so why don't you go ahead and dive into your...
State our names for the record. I'm Scott Hopkins with RRM Design Group.
I'm Alan Bleeker with Ownership.
So Alan is going to briefly describe kind of some of the funding sources and kind of what necessitated the change, and then I'll walk you through the changes in depth.
Okay.
Good afternoon. Again, my name is Alan Bleeker, and I'm here representing our family who owns the property and the business located at this location. My father-in-law was one of the original bankers at Santa Barbara Bank and Trust, who purchased Capital Hardware, which was started in 1964. He purchased it in the early 70s, the business and the property. And this is a project that came to us out of AUD, that the architect came and suggested that we might build a project on this property. We're not developers. We're business owners and property owners. But the opportunity came to us, and it sounded exciting. It was an opportunity for us to build workforce housing. And we are a typical local company, family-owned company, that about 50% of our employees live outside the area. And so it's very important for us to have something like this for our community where people can live and work in the community. Developers have the funding down. We don't. So we looked at a number of different sources and looked at the possibility of having somebody come in from the outside and take a considerable amount of ownership. And we went to HUD, and Housing and Urban Development has a program for funding that was suggested to us, and we've chased that. It's a very long process to get funding, but we're able to do this project by ourselves without any major funders from the outside. And so it's extremely important for us to go through the long details in the process of getting this HUD financing so that we can do this ourselves. We do not plan to sell this project. This is a legacy project for our families, for our kids, and for my father-in-law, who is a staple in this community. So thank you for having us back.
Thank you. Typically, we don't go into funding sources, but in this case, because it's a HUD project, that comes with some baggage. And first and foremost with HUD is they require that all the residential units be above the floodplain, actually 12 inches above the BFE. So that necessitated raising all the residential units up to essentially 5 feet, which is a dramatic change to the project. So the interior courtyard of the project, everything's been raised to 5 feet. And we were able to do that by tweaking the plate heights a bit, and they were formerly 9.1 on the upper floors. We squeezed a little bit and managed to get everything to fit within the exact same height limit. So the mass, bulk, and scale of the building have not changed at all. It's essentially the exact same project. With that, following that, given the Montecito floods, there was a lot of concern from the city about buildings in the floodplain. This is in the floodplain. So the city was insistent that the commercial space also be 5 feet above the sidewalk on Milpas.
Oh my gosh.
Which is a nightmare, right? It just doesn't work. How do you get ADA ramps up there? No one can see your window shop. So we kind of took a step back and thought, well, maybe we can do residential there. In fact, residential works really well 5 feet above the grade because you have privacy and you can enter from the back. You don't need street frontage. So we did that. HUD loved that. They're in the business of providing housing. That's their mission. So essentially, we swapped out the retail along Milpas with residential units. And when you have a unit 5 feet in the air, you've got to do some things to adjust for proportions so they don't look like they're floating. So the first thing we did was we moved this entire wing of the building back 3 feet. And that gave us the opportunity to do a lot more landscaping, some raised planters, some deeper landscaping, and really, I think, is an enhancement to the building. Again, in the bedroom windows, they look like they were kind of floating. So part of in the window recess, we've got some decorative metal panels which stretch the proportions down and kind of bring both them back into feeling more normal and natural. This is just a placeholder, but this will be an artist's mural. It was a requirement from the board back in 2016 that where the electrical room in Transformer R is to have some sort of artist mural or some sort of public art there. So that's just a stand-in for that. So we're quite pleased with the way this elevation turned out. We were able to negotiate with the city to have at least some portion of the project, the retail at grade. And we felt like the corner of the project, it was very important to have some retail remain at grade. So after much negotiation with the city and the building department, we're protecting these doorways and storefronts with floodgates. So there still is kind of a commercial hub at the corner of the project. Given that was approved with floodgates, we opted to lengthen the storefront all the way to grade and make larger storefront openings. But otherwise, it's essentially the same. Now, as the project turns the corner onto Ortega, we formerly had what were called residential services there, and that was the gym for the apartment building, the leasing office, a maintenance office. The city insisted that all that be raised up 5 feet above grade. Once we did that, it made sense to have the residential units on the outside of the building and then have the gym facing inward because there's ADA issues and access issues. So we've gone through the same design revisions, and we have 2 residential units on the Ortega elevation there. And that side was already set back pretty generously, so we were able to squeeze some planters in there as well.
Do we have a previously approved that?
We do, and so in the back here, I've included a site plan.
I was searching for them and I was unable to locate them.
So in the 8.5 by 11 I sent you with the former elevations here, or
These
11 by 17.
These
yeah.
are the former?
These, well, you see the proposed. This is an earlier proposed when it was kind of red plaster. And then these are the elevations with kind of the brick.
The final?
Yep, the final.
Approved?
Final approved.
Okay.
So you can compare these with these. We opted for 11 by 17 because you can see them both together. Go back and forth.
Okay.
Lastly,
this is the final.
in 2016,
Previously
the
approved.
board had requested that the ground floor be brick as opposed to plaster. I think we had shown, it's included in that package, an earlier sketch where we had kind of a terracotta colored plaster. And I think someone made a suggestion, well, if you're going that route, why not just do brick? And then I think everyone said, yeah, let's make it brick. We'd like to propose plaster. I mean, Santa Barbara is a plaster city. All the finest buildings are plaster. It's a wonderful material. Brick seemed to me like an odd choice. There is that one brick building at Haley and Milpas. And then further down by the freeway, there's one smaller storefront. But it seemed like an odd choice. I don't remember ever in my 4-year term on ABR ever mandating that a project be built out of brick. So it's a different board. We'd like to just take the temperature of the board and see if there's any consensus that plaster would be an acceptable material for the project. We have landscape plans if there's time, and we can go over details. But in the interest of saving your time, we'd like you to focus on these, what are the biggest changes, and get your feedback on that. We'll be back for a full final review at a later date. So that concludes the presentation.
Okay. We'll then go to open public comment. We have a couple of speaker slips. Christine Newhauser. You guys need to sit in the audience for a few minutes.
Okay.
Please.
Hi, how are you?
Hello. Good, thank you. Welcome.
So, anyway, I realize that they already have their PDA, so I'm, of course, very saddened by that because I still think the mass bulk and scale is too large for that location. And what I think the plaster is a much better idea. But what I think is so sad is that it doesn't go with the neighborhood. The neighborhood is mixed, of course, but it is all a 1- and 2-story buildings. And what I am most saddened about is that the junior high kids, that I think they're so impressionable at that age, and I mean, still are at that point. And I think that's probably one of the prettiest places most of them are during the day. This is what they look at from their schoolyard. It's so beautiful, if you've ever gone and stood on that playing field. And yet, they'll be looking at something like that, which, you know, it will be, I mean, it'll take their whole view of the Riviera. And I just think that that's really, you know, this is the one at Olive and Cannon Perdido, which will look something like that from the back, and that'll be modern, and it won't look like Santa Barbara. And for them to lose that, I just think is so short-sighted. And it's the same thing of when you combine this many parcels and you make it so big and going across, they don't even get anything in between except, you know, at Ortega Street, or unless they look out at De La Guerra. And of course, that'll be until this will be the new norm, and then that will get built up too. And I think we're destroying the look of Santa Barbara. And I just think that that's a really, really sorry thing to do. The traffic will still be the same, and, you know, it'll be too much traffic, et cetera. But I think junior high kids' lives do matter, and so does the look of Santa Barbara. And I think we're destroying that with slowly, incrementally, largely.
Okay.
Wow.
Thank you. Natalia Govani. See, it only took a year and a half.
That's it, but it's a year and a half. Good afternoon, everybody. I ditto what Christine Newhouser just said. I think this project is extremely too massive for Santa Barbara, let alone the east side. I think this committee sitting here today has done a big disservice to the east side residents and businesses by approving this. This looks like LA, Chicago, and the applicant is setting a precedence. He doesn't live here. He lives in Carpinteria. Put it there. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Guys can come forward, please. And we'll go to questions from the board. Howard.
So you raised the floor level of the first floor 5 feet, and you have placed all the residential units at 5 feet. Only the corner is at original grade.
Correct.
This is to satisfy HUD and the requirement
HUD
for
and FEMA
flood.
and city requirements.
But you said that the overall size, bulk, and scale of the building did not increase.
Here's a pre-HUD and...
We put it over here.
Oh, I'm sorry. We can... Scott. Pardon me. I should know better. So you can see, formerly the first floor plate heights for the residential were quite high behind the retail. So those kind of shrunk a little bit, and then we modulated the upper floors from 9.1 to 8.8 plate heights to everything kind of went accordioned up a little bit. So the height of the building is exactly the same.
So you really cut it out of the first floor plate heights?
Yeah, and then
which were what at the time?
Oh, they
12
were
feet or
12
something?
feet, yeah. And so luckily we were able to do it.
And you set the building back?
And we moved this wing of the building back to the side of the entry, back 3 feet.
The uphill,
It was important to have
the
some
uphill
buffer.
side of Milpas wing back.
Exactly, yeah. And that, you know, as Milpas heads up that way, it's already transitioning to more residential.
What is the material of your awnings, and did they change?
They are still the corrugated metal that was approved with a metal frame. And then there's some sunshades, which are kind of prefab aluminum awnings up in various locations.
Prefab aluminum, like what does that mean?
They're a boxed awning with fins inside them that screen the sun.
I see, okay. There's no fabric other than the umbrellas that you show on the roof?
It is, I guess, a fabricless building, yes.
The fabricless building. And did you modify the parapet detail? How?
We did, well, we modified several details. One of the main things we did at the back of the project, Howard, you have to get flipped to the elevations, I think, in the sheet.
Mm-hmm.
So the back of the building, this was a uniform height back here. We ended up popping up a piece of parapet here to help kind of modulate the edge of that, which works well for our crickets behind there, for the gutters and things.
So parapet height changed a little bit.
I think we were able to pull this gutter down, and this is still the max parapet height. And that's just a clean plaster edge with no flashing.
So there's one that's clean plaster, and then what is the detail of this other one that has a reveal or shadow?
The other the other flashings are painted sheet metal.
Painted sheet metal.
Yep.
Okay. These scuppers are not functional?
Those are the overflow scuppers from the decks, and they're kind of a brass decorative kind of tongue element. They're kind of cool.
And so then the height of this parapet is determined by the 42 inches required from above the roof deck?
Decks, yes. And that's the same as the entitled drawings.
No further questions.
Okay, thanks. Kevin?
Yeah, while we're on the elevation, so on the previously approved elevation, color elevation sheet, does somebody have one of those?
Previously,
third sheet in here.
On what's called the front elevation, which
is Milpas.
Milpas. If we compare that to the new north elevation or proposed, what's going on the top floor? There was sort of some vague description of what's going on up there. Now there's some more development. Is that?
Well, it's the exact same. I think this elevation took some artistic liberties and faded it back, so you could read what you really see from the street. From above the parapet back, that's on the other side of the courtyard, so you're looking over the top of the building. So it's not anything you would perceive from Milpas. But the design is essentially the same.
Are the materials, there's some horizontal siding kind of recessed back in there, and is that all consistent with the last?
Correct, yeah. If you look at the back side of the building before and now, it always had the horizontal siding. It turns the corner and wraps back facing the junior high.
it's just not shown here.
Yeah, it's not shown there. It's ghosted out. And it may have been shown in a section view at another point, I'm not sure.
Okay. About the brick, I mean, that was originally a veneer, probably, of some sort.
A lick and stick, yeah.
Yeah. And is the desire to change truly an aesthetic issue, or is it a budget-driven issue, or is it a bit of both?
You know, it's all the above. It's this design with so many piers and recesses doesn't lend itself to applied veneer brick in the corners and getting the modules to work out. And frankly, we didn't think the brick was the best option visually. It feels odd for Santa Barbara, honestly.
Okay. And tell me a little bit more about the residential railings that you have now on the bottom. We've got some pattern.
Yeah, we've got detail of that. They're, we have this kind of custom metalwork below the windows. It will be in the recess of the windows. And it's kind of a Mondrian pattern, and it's just kind of pulling some of that pattern and interest down to the street level at the residential balconies there.
Okay, is that pulling, are those circles, or is that?
Those are squares. There's some details. Okay. When we changed the courtyard to a higher level, we opened up the bottom floor beneath the canopy, and we have a decorative security gate there. So they're kind of Mondrian square patterns that kind of march around the bottom. There's a full size detail of that in the set that we can look at if you like.
Okay. Is that being pulled from any sort of particular style in the neighborhood, or is this something that's sort of new to?
The original drawings hinted at something like that in the design.
Okay.
So we're just trying to be true to that.
Okay. I don't recall that or see that, but is that?
Kevin, if I could just tag on to that question, is that this was also originally glass, it looks like right here.
So with the nature of the floodgates and allowing the project to flood, we needed to get to the elevator, and we needed to get to the stairs up to the courtyard. And to do that in storefront created issues with floodgates and how you protect that in a flood. So the best option was to build concrete walls and floodproof inside there and just let the floodwaters come in and recede out. Proved the best way to handle it in terms of flooding.
So what are we seeing there then? What is?
So if you look at the courtyard, so it's a little kind of vestibule area prior to the stairs into the project and the elevator. So you're seeing
the header? It's like a big header or something?
well, there's a big canopy that comes out. If you look at the 3D view, you can see what's happening there. The ENFA 11. So there's a canopy that projects out several
Okay.
feet. And then sucked deep within that is kind of a decorative gate. And then there's...
So a visitor would walk up to this gate, ring the buzzer of some sort, get let in, and then you'd walk under the building and then up some stairs or the elevator?
Exactly, correct. You can walk up to the courtyard level or hop on the elevator right there. And once we went that direction, it felt really nice to be able to look through and see light through the building and the prospect of a green courtyard in there.
Okay. Then this glass railing looks like up top there. That went from a metal work to some sort of a glass.
Yeah, it's a glass railing at the top of the roof deck, and we'd love to hear your comments on that. We felt it was a nice continuity, just kind of have that the same material all the way up. We're open to suggestions there.
Did the window proportions change a little bit? Did they get a little bit more square, or are they the same?
They were, you're talking about the commercial or the residential?
On the north elevation, sort of in the field, the window fields.
Maybe it's the awnings that are making your perception different. They've always been 5x5.
Okay. The awnings looks like they're overhanging a little bit more.
Maybe that's changing your perception of it, yeah.
Okay. Okay, those are my questions.
Okay, thanks. Bob?
I wasn't on the board when this got PDA. I would like to review the landscape plans. I don't want to take the time to do that now. I would ask of staff whether I can review the landscape plans next week. I was out of town last week, so I didn't have a chance to look at this project ahead of time. Do I have that option?
Are you asking if you can come in
Yeah.
and review the plans? Absolutely.
Right, okay. So I'll be prepared then when this comes in for final to comment on the landscape drawings.
Okay.
Thank you, that's all.
Okay. Amy, questions?
Yes. So the plans now, or the previous plan had commercial all on the first floor.
Correct.
On the ground level on the street.
Correct.
Now we only have this.
That's right.
And then, I think you just talked through this, but I was a little confused. Can you actually, are these buildings, can you like walk from one building to another through here, or only at the top, only at the roof?
You can. Within there's kind of a bridge element that connects those two pieces. This is a
But behind
steel channel that separates the two pieces of curtain wall there.
Right, but it's open 2 levels, right?
If you look
It's
at
like a
the-
2-level space with the
At
walkway
the entry,
at the
but
back.
there's also a walkway further back that
Further
connects
back.
the second level.
Yeah, okay. Okay. Was there any commercial around the side previously? There was on
There
where
was,
you
it
were
was,
just over here, or
we kind of maxed out on our parking requirements for commercial, so it was, the gym for the residents. It
Right.
wasn't, and that was something that HUD mandated to be above the floodplain as well.
right? That was that over in this
That was
area,
entry from there to there.
and
It
then
was leasing office, gym, maintenance room, various kind of residential services.
okay, and this is this updated
Correct.
plan. So now farther down, there's a parking
Yeah.
access that wasn't there before.
So we've, opted for a big rolling up garage door to make that retail space kind of be able to flow out onto the street, and it might be a nice thing for our tenants. Right here. So these are the two new residential units on the ground floor, 5 feet above grade.
Mm-hmm. Okay. That was all
That's
I
it?
had.
Okay. David, questions?
Since we're on the, or if you look at the atrium real quick, the last time it was approved, the spacing of the channels were a little bit more evened, and now they feel like they're pulling up towards the top of the atrium itself. Is there a reason for that?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
You go to the elevations.
Mhm.
Look on that sheet.
Oh, okay.
Here you can see the two different.
Yeah.
There's-
Spacing was more even on the last round, looked more balanced, and now it's kind of raised up higher, and then it squishes at the top.
And there wasn't glass up there.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's something we could study. We could raise it up a little bit. If there were issues with wind load and you know, the structure of the curtain wall that needed that intermediate channel to help support it.
Gotcha. And then on the east elevation, the previous iteration, there's this piece of metal awning that projects off the wall where the roll-up doors used to be and runs across and kind of carried over that door. And now it looks like it's pulled back a little bit now.
Yeah, it didn't. Once we added, you know, residential units here, the awning didn't make sense to continue over their windows. It'd be so deeply shaded. So we pulled it back just to cover where the residential or the commercial portion is.
And then took it off on that other massing right here.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotcha. And I believe one of the comments was to look at, let me find it, something about the awnings, removing them at ground level on one of the elevations. Can you run?
We looked at
they're
that,
still on
yeah, and they're still there, and we thought about that, and we're open to removing them. You know, Santa Barbara, the grid is 45 degrees off north, so everything gets sun at some point. So it made sense to keep them, and visually they're a nice decorative element.
They help because of orientation to kind of protect those windows a little bit.
There's no true north, so
Yeah.
when you say north, it's still getting hit in the early morning.
Yeah. Okay, and then the surrounding neighborhood, how would you characterize? Do you have photos with you or in the set that kind of show? I know it's a
Staff may
couple
have
years,
them.
but
You know, it's Milpas. There's some Spanish style. There's it's eclectic. You know, I don't think we want to kind of re-adjudicate the project approval. I think the mass bulk and scale and architectural character have been kind of hashed out through many, many reviews.
I'm just trying to get a sense for these new changes and how it reflects with the rest of the area.
We feel it's going to be a great addition to the neighborhood.
No further questions.
Okay. Okay, comments, Howard?
Well, I appreciate the applicant's efforts to keep the building in scale despite the raising, essentially it's not a podium, but it's just raising the floor of the atrium, the inner courtyard. Given that this project has PDA, and it is what it is, it's not really a Milpas compatible project. This is a modern building, and in view of the changes, I would like to ask the applicants to make this a warmer building, maybe with certainly contemporary style, but the detailing might be a little, maybe less industrial and a less crisp. For example, one thing that bothers me is the painted metal parapet flashings. Another thing that bothers me is that from the Ortega elevation, east elevation, that the parapets really do not modulate. And although some have the metal coping and others do not, I realize they're punching in and out. But they seem rather blocky. And I wish the massing could be studied to make them less blocky. One thing that comes to mind is perhaps when you have a railing at the top, the roof deck, it's required to be 42 inches. But maybe you could reduce it to a lower height and add some kind of a pipe or some kind of a railing there that would provide some eye candy and chewing gum for the eyes, so that you would see something up there that was not just a hard edge, especially since people are going to be walking up to it and touching it and so forth. Another thing that I would like to I'd like to make is about the awnings, which are already metallic. They're corrugated metal, and then these projected shade canopies, which are already, again, both of those are very industrial items. And I wish they could be either through color or design made less industrial, given what they are. But there may be some way to treat that so that they're less industrial. They look more cozy. I think that you have predominant colors of brown, kind of I don't know what you call the yellow color. What is that? Do you know?
Mustard yellow, perhaps, or
mustard yellow, and then brown. I wish the colors could be a little more intense or a little more less dull. Have more life. So those are my initial comments.
Thanks, Howard. Kevin.
Okay. So I recall us spending a number of meetings trying to get to the point where this building was broken down enough that it felt less large and less massive. And a lot of the efforts that went into doing that, you can see on the previous front elevation, if we can throw that out there.
Sorry, I've got it.
For instance, I recall this being under some pretty heavy discussion, and some of the detailing in the brick and all of that. What was successful about the brick, in my mind, was the fact that it was so different than the rest of the building. Really helped to set that off and make it look as if this was a building and then this happened to be built next to it at some other time. And for me, that was one of the critical elements of letting it move forward. So to simply change the color of this base and make this the same color as that really defeats that whole effort. So, and that's one of the biggest changes in the project. So I think the project suffers from that, and also suffers from the removal of a lot of the detailing, like these charm-giving elements that were holding up these cantilevered awnings, and other texture on the building has disappeared and really stripped away a lot of the uniqueness and specialness that you guys had created. And now it's a building that's much more commercial, much more flat and dull, and especially in areas like this, that just sort of reads very commercial and very ordinary, whereas this had some unique detail going on there. There was a hint at some textured railing there that could be really nice. So I would really hope that you could add some more of that back into the project. I understand there's financing, but it also needs to gel better with the community and and not be an ordinary development. I think that was really the bulk of my comments.
Okay, thanks.
Please forgive me if I overstep my bounds with regard to the PDA going forward. But I'll start commenting. I think with regard to the brick, there is a building on the west side of State Street. I think it's in the 1900 block. That's got a lot of brick. It's a very modernist building, I guess I would say. 2 stories, maybe 3. It's an office
What
building.
street?
State Street, I'm sorry.
Okay.
1900 block of State. And the brick there really makes the building. It grounds the building. And I think you could do the same thing here. I think that would benefit the building. You mentioned plaster being a much more Santa Barbara feeling element. In my opinion, that's really the only thing Santa Barbara about this building. I think this is another unfortunate example of second decade 2000s architecture, which just does not belong in Santa Barbara, but I know you got PDAs, so it's as far as I'm going to go on that. I'm going to have to reread the Milpas guidelines, Milpas design guidelines, to see if I can find a way that this actually conforms. But going forward with regard to approvals, I'm going to abstain because I don't really feel it would be appropriate to ask for changes. That's all. Thank you.
Okay.
Mr.
Thanks.
Chair.
Yes.
If Board Member Cunningham abstains, we won't have someone reviewing the landscape. So we can, if he
can abstain from the architecture.
Or we can have HLC review it. I just wanted to make that
No,
clear.
I'm happy to review the landscape plans because they did not get PDA, presumably? Was the landscape included in the PDA?
It's typical for us to not separate those 2 approvals out from landscape and architecture. It's all
I have to check.
one.
I can't remember.
Okay. No one remembers.
I think.
I'll rely on your judgment going forward on that.
Absent the last one.
I hadn't seen this until this year. Obviously,
Sure,
I was
so
not
we
on the
can-
board prior to 2018.
I think it's, normally I would go on to Amy. I'm just going to throw in a few comments because I just have a few, because I was the one abstaining or opposing vote on this project when it was approved. And we, as Kevin mentioned, and as was originally presented by the architect, that this was going to be a wedding of traditional style architecture with more contemporary elements. And the board as a whole bought off on that as being the direction that this project was going. And as Kevin's mentioned, some of those character-giving, more traditional elements now have been removed. So now it is a very contemporary building. And I would say that to me, and I know you guys are good architects. There's no question about that. I'm not trying to denigrate the talent and the work and the effort that's gone into this. But that in this location on Milpas, I don't see anything within many blocks in either direction, east or west, north or south, that's similar in any way in mass, bulk, and scale, or in architectural style. So to me, this building, doesn't fit. So those are my comments. We'll go on to Amy.
Okay. I guess first off, I completely agree with what Kevin was saying as far as like the materials and how you're breaking up this massing. It does totally change how you read the building, because before we were looking at pieces and how to break up that mass, especially on Milpas. But also, I think that to lose, especially with Milpas being such a pedestrian-friendly street, to lose all the commercial on that street is kind of a loss to the project and the interaction. And looking at this as like a mixed-use building, because before you had all this glass that's open to the street, so if you're walking down, there's more of a relationship between someone who's walking on the sidewalk and what's happening on that first on the ground level, and I think it's kind of a loss for the project and like the neighborhood and where this is going. So that's kind of a big piece for me, because before it was really open. Now, I mean, I understand what you did and why you did it, but I think for the project and for the neighborhood, it would be a loss to lose that, to lose the commercial downstairs. And I agree with sort of the rest of the comments about all the detailing and everything that we had seen previously, especially like up here at the top of where that glass is, and just how everything is coming together. I think you need to take another look at how they separated the building with the colors and materials, and revisit that. And also just to look at all the materials together, because you can see in this elevation you can't see the brown siding, and I know you could see it on the other elevation, but I think that's key to simplify. But here there was like moments where there was detail, and I think looking at that, if there's some textured material, if brick comes back here, do you still keep the siding? You know, I think that all needs to be looked at together. But I also just think that losing the commercial space is a big loss.
Okay, thank you. David?
I agree with the comments that Board Member Moore made. I wasn't here to review the project originally, of course, so I'm not going to comment about certain things, I think, because it's been approved for PDA. But some elements that you're presenting today, I think maybe need a little bit more restudying. When I look at the elevations right now, especially from afar, you know, as if I was across the street or something, or a couple blocks away, it reads a little out of scale. You know, I understand the size of the project, so it's fitting for the program, but I think that, as a lot of all the board members have pointed out, is the loss of character in little elements with detailing in materials. And I think more importantly, it loses the dialogue of materials that was happening on the last round of elevations you guys presented. Amy pointed out with the wood, I see that on the third level. So if maybe plaster is, you know, if you're not trying to do the brick at ground level, then maybe there's a material that you already have on site that's already being proposed that you start to integrate. Maybe the wood siding or something starts to come down, but I'm not saying it should, because personally I think that really starts to make it read like a style that's not in place with the area. But there is material that's already there, so I think somehow that needs to be explored, whatever that relationship is if these parts can start acting as less bulky and start articulating these pop-outs and these articulations that you're doing a little bit stronger, I think that helps, because what I'm seeing with this raising of the 5 feet on the ground level is everything's starting to pull away from the pedestrian. You know, Milpas is a very pedestrian corridor, so I get why you're having to do it, and I understand, and it makes a lot of sense, you know, long-term viability. But I think if you're pulling up now, you don't want to give the impression with that and then the gate and stuff, these things are starting to feel like unwelcoming. I think that's when I read that as one of the things I wrote down was unwelcoming. And I don't think that's ever the intention you want out of a residential project. So if there's ways you can explore materials, maybe adding back certain elements again of detailing to kind of bring more human scale into the project again at ground level if you're not doing access. I would recommend looking at the resetting of that front entry gate again too, because that feels very like a school or like a commercial building. And I think even the atrium, how you're spacing those C channels and stuff for structural reasons, I understand that. But if you're able to kind of work out even that element, I think if it gets restudied, whether it's glass panel size or mullions or structural, I think that would start to kind of bring down the scale a little bit more. So for me, I would be looking for just elements to kind of bring down the overall sense of bulk and kind of get that human scale back in there again, and somehow finding a thread that does ground that in the area, because it is very eclectic in that area, but there are still threads of continuity if you look for them. So I think you guys can do that. I'm not worried about that execution part, but I would like to see more. Okay. Thanks. I'm sorry, and I'd also like that as the colors. I agree with that comment that somebody made about the colors being warmer, if possible.
Okay. So who'd like to make a motion?
We're hoping to get just a little bit of feedback on if this notion of the residential units on the ground floor, is it approvable? You know, provided that maybe it goes back to brick, whatever it takes, but is that a deal breaker? Because we don't have a lot of options. We're mandated to kind of.
Okay, well, let's do a straw vote.
What's the comment from the applicant there?
The straw vote would be how many board members feel that this project could work with the loss of the commercial that's being proposed today.
Could work.
We're not talking about all the architectural concerns we have, but could it still work if it was properly developed with the loss of the commercial? How many board members feel that it could work?
Oh, I'll say yes on that.
There you go.
Okay, thank you.
So I have a comment, one more little comment to add. The retaining wall at the sidewalk that retains the planter, there's a raised level, that does not have to be the same color as the element.
Doesn't, no.
So that's one area of study. And
Are you making a motion now, Howard?
No,
'Cause we
I'm
need a
not.
motion.
I was just under discussion before
Okay.
you asked for under discussion.
Well, we need a
Making
motion.
comment.
We need
I don't know how to make a motion on that. This
Okay.
is too much.
All right. Kevin?
So comments only, so are these comments be specific to allow staff to determine? Would these comments be specific to allow staff to determine substantial conformancy, or how would that
Well,
work?
just comments on the design, whether you think they're heading in the right direction. I know you have a number of comments, but just whether the design is appropriate or leading in the right direction. They'll be back again.
Okay.
Before, they'll be back here again, before going on, or what?
So after here, we'll do our substantial conformance. That'll probably be wrapped up before it comes back here to you.
Could you do
again.
that in
Yeah.
2 weeks? If we gave them a 2-week continuance? You could
No,
do-
we have a 30-day review.
Okay.
So
It'll be at least a
4
month. We'll
weeks.
see it again in a month.
So it would be an indefinite continuance.
Right.
With the comments to restudy the proposed ground floor finishes as proposed. Now, this is what I'm throwing out. As proposed, the brown stucco is not acceptable as presented. That the board feels the base of the building requires more charm-giving detail and elements, similar to what was previously approved. Study the commercial, or restudy the commercial nature of the entry and the glazing above the entry.
To make it less commercial?
To make it less commercial. Restudy the industrial nature of the awnings.
Canopies.
I'm saying awnings. Restudy the proposed colors of the plaster. What else did we have? Restudy the parapet detailing and remove the metal parapet cap. Anything else?
Howard made a comment about reducing the parapet heights where possible to provide variation.
I like that.
Reduce and vary the parapet heights where possible.
And I think you also made the comment, Kevin, about, this maybe go on with alongside another comment you made, but the texture-giving and character-giving elements that were present in the previous approval, the loss of those is not acceptable. Something along that line.
Yeah, yes. So the loss of, let's just add that.
Yeah,
Lost her.
agreed. understand your message there. Could we add something to the effect of that it may not be approvable now, but given that we do what the board intends, that the ground floor retail can be made.
Well, the straw vote goes into the
Okay,
minutes.
okay.
It'll be there in the minutes,
Okay,
so,
great.
yeah.
I think it's
Yeah.
important for
that,
the-
we've covered it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, is that,
Kevin also made a point about exterior colors, using exterior colors to break up the monolithic nature of this building.
Mhm.
And I thought that was very appropriate.
I think he added, he
Yeah,
did
we mentioned
mention restudying the
restudy the
colors.
colors.
Yeah. But you could add that phrase
Right.
to help break up the monolithic character.
fair enough, yes.
Okay, so we have a motion. We need a seconder.
I'll second that.
Second by Howard. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? One opposed. Two opposed.
Yeah, I
One
still think the
abstention.
commercial
So
is a loss to the project.
Okay, Amy's opposing because she feels the
The
commercial is a
commercial
loss.
space on Milpas Street.
Yeah. Bob is abstaining from the approval of the architecture, and I'm opposing. Because I opposed this project in the previous approval.
And we have
I
a
feel
split.
it's gone,
It's 3-3.
it's mass bulk and scale is not appropriate, needs to be broken up more, and the architectural design doesn't fit with the character of the neighborhood. So, but you have 3 votes in favor, so you have a 1-month or indefinite continuance.
Okay. Hey, thank you guys very much.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Impressive.
Take a short agenda tonight.
Yeah. Your motion was really
All right, we're on to item 3,
No, it was really good.
501 East Mitchell Terena Street. You want to read the project description, Amy?
Sure. Proposal for a new multi-unit residential development using the AUD program. Project consists of demolition of an existing single-story duplex and detached 2-car garage and the construction of a new 4-unit, 2-story apartment building. Unit mix will include 1 3-bedroom unit, 1 2-bedroom unit, and 1 1-bedroom unit, and 1 studio unit, ranging in size from 575 square feet to 1,335 square feet, with an average unit size of 965 square feet. The proposed density on this 7,500 square foot lot is 24 dwelling units per acre on a parcel with a general plan land use designation of medium-high density, which allows for 15 to 27 dwelling units per acre. Also proposed are 4 parking spaces, site alterations and landscaping, and alterations to on-site sandstone retaining wall bordering the sidewalk. Grading will include 10 cubic yards of cut and 35 cubic yards of fill. This is the 3rd concept review. Action may be taken. Project requires an environmental finding, CEQA. It was last reviewed February 12th. Really here for project design approval.
And the motion last time was indefinite continuance with the following comments. The board finds the proposed mass bulk and scale acceptable. The board finds the style as revised is acceptable. And the 3rd comment, provide an arborist report for the oak at the northwestern corner of the property. It is desired that the existing oak remain on site if feasible, and applicant to provide appropriate replacement if it's not feasible. And it was a 3-1 vote. Cunningham opposed. Wittosh and Watkins were absent. Welcome back.
Thank you. Ken Vermillion, Design Arc.
Mark Kirkhart, Design Arc.
So yeah, we're here to Just revisit final PDA. We have submitted the archaeologist report and got positive findings from the city. And we have submitted the arborist report. The intent is to keep the oak tree and work within the guidelines of that report.
And the only reason we didn't give it PDA is because that hadn't been completed.
Correct.
Yeah. So nothing's changed.
The only thing we've added to the site plan sheet is the tree protection measures per the arborist report and feedback from the city arborist. And we've basically called out a small 8-foot plus or minus arc of gravel immediately adjacent to the trunk of the tree. We've gotten verbal approval from transportation that a curb that could hold that could be flush to not obstruct any car back out space. And so that's the intent. No trenching or anything in the area, no pavers within that 8 feet. And the outer court is to be determined exactly what product we go with, whether it be paver or a thinner paving system.
Okay. Does that complete your presentation?
I just wanted to add one thing. In our previous presentation, the majority of the board understood, I believe, what we were trying to present with this. But since I see members of the public here, I'd like to just kind of state our case slightly differently than we said last time, and that is the fact that we were trying to show with this map was not that there were necessarily other structures such as this in the immediate neighborhood, but that other neighborhoods in the downtown area with a predominance of craftsmen and so forth are peppered with examples of buildings such as what we're proposing, which were of the era, of the same era actually as when those other buildings were built. So we think that's why I think you made the finding that it's compatible, and we appreciate that.
Okay. All right, so we'll open public comment. And we have, it's like 3 requests to speak that are, although we have more people present, those people, additional people have given over their time to the 3 speakers. So we'll start with Pat Saley. And Susan Spector is here.
No, you're ceding your time to me. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so you get 4 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. I am here representing myself and my family. We live at 1517 Olive, like about right there. And Susan Spector lives at 1513, right across from me. And this is the 3rd meeting we've been to, and we still feel very, very strongly that this project is not compatible with the neighborhood. And one illustration of that is the primary route of travel in this area is up and down Olive Street. That goes for pedestrians, bicyclists, cars. People do come along, let me get oriented here, Mitchell Terena from downtown, but a lot of people make a left up Olive. Many, many people access this area via Anapamu. They go up Olive Street. This is the bungalow district. It's right across from this site, and one of my neighbors will elaborate on that. And as you come up Olive from Anapamu, that is almost entirely bungalows. There are not a lot of people who turn right on Mitchell Terena. And I think the traffic counts, we could get them, but they would bear this out. So people are moving up or down Olive. It is almost entirely bungalows. And yes, there is a big office building next door to this. That whole area has been rezoned from medical office to multi-family residential. The hospital from which these office buildings were born, I guess you could say, is no longer there. It is probably the most recent development in the area, and it is in a bungalow style that I understand went through a lot of iterations. But it works. It's fairly dense, but it works. And we just think it's really a mistake to key off these office buildings, and they no longer have that zoning. They are legal nonconforming uses. They may transition to residential, so we want to keep that residential feel in the neighborhood. We feel it's unfortunate. The last meeting, there were only 4 of you, and you did a straw vote because it, in my opinion, sends the wrong message to the applicant. With a more complete board, it's a better reading. And you had more members at your, I think it was February 12th or so, meeting where I thought the board was pretty clear that this project was going in the wrong architectural direction. So we would encourage you to go back to your February meeting notes and send them back to the drawing board to come up with a project that fits the neighborhood. We just don't think you can make the neighborhood compatibility findings for this project, and we feel very strongly about that.
Okay,
Thank you.
Sarah Stokes. And Barry Spector has given over his time. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
I'm Sarah Stokes. I'm at 526 East Mitchell-Torrena. So I pass this corner multi-times a day, the corner of Olive and Mitchell-Torrena, as I head to town or head up Olive towards the Mission. I have not been to previous meetings, although I saw the notices and have talked to other neighbors. I am part of the Bungalow Association. I also survived the St. Francis, which, after being part of those neighborhood efforts, I think everyone feels very comfortable that all efforts were made to try and work their hardest to incorporate the design and the scope of that project so it really suits the neighborhood. And now seeing this full design just feels so monolithic on a high corner coming around. My other main concern is parking. So you have 4 units going in and only 4 parking spaces. That street, if anyone travels Mitchell-Torrena with all the doctor's offices, with the parking and with the homes that we live on the one side of Mitchell-Torrena, parking is a challenge constantly. And it was one of the biggest concerns when the St. Francis project went in. So I just wanted to really express that, you know, where are those people living in 4 units? One is a 3-bedroom. Chances are you'll have 3 people living there with cars. Like, where do those people park if there's only 4 parking spaces? So that is one of the busiest corners. I know it's a 4-way stop. There's Roosevelt School up the street. So 8 o'clock every morning, that is a busy, busy intersection. So that's one of my main concerns. And as one of those people that live across the street from one of those medical buildings, I bought that house because those buildings were already there, so I bought knowing that was the case. But it'd be nice to think that it could come back to look more like a neighborhood than to continue to look like an industrial zone. So that would be my input for this project.
Okay, thank you. Petra Reese.
Apologize for my handwriting.
That's all right. Speaking for also Tina Scheffler? Tina Scheffler. Scheffler. We have 4 minutes.
Hi.
Hi.
Yeah, I'm at 1521 Olive Street, so I'm also a direct neighbor with Pat and the Spectors, and so I support everything that has been said so far, and I think all of us in the neighborhood, feel very much the same, and I think most of the important points have been made. I just wanted to add one other point. I purchased my property there 5 years ago, and one of the reasons for that was the historic charm of the mixed Spanish colonial and bungalow style. And the one thing that most worries me about this proposal is the slippery slope. I appreciate what was said, that there are small examples of such modern architecture throughout downtown, but I feel that our residential neighborhood really benefits from the current feel of it. And I feel once this precedent gets set, this particular will be the example for the next one who will say, oh, well, there's a modern building right there at the corner of Olive and Mitchell-Torrena, and then the next modern building and the next modern building, and that way our neighborhood loses its charm and its historic character.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Very good, thank you. So we'll close public comment unless there's anyone else who would like to speak on this project. Seeing none, we'll continue on with the hearing and go to questions from the board. Howard.
Moment. Time.
Time?
What is the nature of the architecture of the buildings, the commercial buildings next door?
Let me just ask you, did you get a chance to review the
I've seen this.
videos from last time?
No.
The videos from last time? No? Okay.
I have looked at this project at the inception.
Yeah, but it changed.
Well, thank you.
It's significantly changed from the previous submittal, and there was new information provided. So if you haven't reviewed the
No,
video, I
that's-
mean, technically...
This
should-
is to exactly what I was looking for.
Okay.
Thank you. And the stone wall that you show, is this the existing stone wall?
Yes.
And you're extending it upstream a little bit up on...
It currently goes all the way until the corner of the neighboring property where the current stair access is. So yes, we would fill that in and create the access in between the two units. But with the idea of maintaining the look of that wall and the same.
And what is the structure that's being removed? What is the size of it?
A
Bedrooms?
duplex, it's on the survey sheet. I think it's like 1,500 square feet, the duplex with
Two
a
units.
detached garage.
How many bedrooms in each?
One bedroom in each unit.
One bedroom in each of the duplexes.
Right. It's a single story with a detached garage.
And the total number of bedrooms that you're proposing in your 3 units is?
3216.
3216.
A 3-bedroom, a 2-bedroom, a 1-bedroom, and a
So
studio.
I see one of the plans shows you come up the stairs and there's a very large room, sort of an anteroom, with its own toilet, no shower, and then you go into a bedroom that has a full bath.
Correct. That's
What's
the one
What's
bedroom.
your idea of this anteroom?
That's the 1 bedroom with a study space or a den space. It's quite small, and as you say, it doesn't have a full bathroom.
That's just a 1-bedroom unit then, yeah.
Correct.
Those are my questions. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Kevin?
So nothing has changed other than the Arbor's report?
No, sir.
Correct.
Okay. No questions.
Okay. Bob?
I have no question.
No
Amy?
questions.
Okay, comments? Howard?
So I think this is not the right place for this architecture. I would not be able to support the architecture of this proposal
Okay.
in this place.
Mhm.
Long story short.
Mhm.
And it's not to say it's bad design. It's just not compatible with the neighborhood, and especially with this building here, which is its neighbor. It's a
I'm just
commercial building.
going to remind you that our policy is that if a board member did not review the video from the previous hearing, that they're not supposed to comment on the project the next time it gets
It would
reviewed.
have been nice to know that before I made my comments.
Well, I thought you knew. I thought you were aware of
don't
it because
know those
we've gone, I mean,
Okay.
it's common
Anyway,
knowledge.
that's where I'm
Okay.
today.
All right. Kevin?
I don't have any different comments from the last meeting.
Okay. Bob?
Nor do I.
Assume that's true for
Yeah, I
Amy.
think
Yes,
all of the same comments we gave the last time. We just couldn't do anything because we were waiting for.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah.
I have reviewed the arborist report. It's a very thorough report, well done. Should this project move forward, then I see that the applicants included the arborist's direction on the drawings.
Okay. So then it's just a matter of making a motion. And they're looking for a PDA. Is there anyone who's interested in making that motion?
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Staff would also request that the project compatibility analysis findings be made at PDA. It actually should be standard practice, but we have fallen out of it, apparently. Came to my knowledge recently. Because
Okay.
we've never done it while I was on the board, but apparently we should be. So, especially in this instance where there's some concerns from the community can be helpful.
Yep, thanks for reminding us. Okay, so I'll make the motion. Indefinite continuance back to the full board with PDA. And going one by one through the compatibility criteria. The city meets the design guidelines of the, as far as we know, of the city charter, municipal code, and is consistent with architectural guidelines, both in site and in building design. We haven't yet reviewed landscaping. It's consistent with the architectural character of the city in both as presented by the applicant as being a style that was, although more contemporary, carries historic elements that have previously been established as being compatible with the general architecture of the city, number one, and as the applicant demonstrated, can be found spotted throughout the Upper East Side. Mass, bulk, and scale is appropriate for the location in the neighborhood. That there are no adjacent landmarks or identified historic resources. So this is not a bungalow district that we're in the middle of, although there may be bungalows around, and that's been, we can see in the photos, there are some. This is not a bungalow district, so it's not a designated historic district. And there's no blocking of public scenic vistas. And there appears to be an adequate amount of open space and landscaping. But we look forward to seeing the landscape design.
Mr. Chair,
yes.
CEQA as well would be great.
Okay. I didn't know this was a CEQA project.
The backside?
Yeah. So the ABR finds that the project qualifies for an exemption from further environmental review under CEQA. Section 15183 based on the city staff analysis and CEQA certificate of determination on file for this project. So that's the motion. We need a seconder.
Second.
Seconded by Amy. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? 2 opposed, 3 in favor. Do you want to stay where you're opposed?
I do not feel the architecture is compatible with the neighborhood. I mean, I heard what Mr. Kirkhardt said.
Mm-hmm.
I don't disagree with that, but this immediate neighborhood, I think, is negatively impacted by this architecture.
Okay. Same for Howard? Okay. Very good. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That ends our ABR meeting for today.
Yeah.
And